Week 6 underway in the NFL, and here's a look at some notable injury reports as we head into the weekend. The Giants will be without Malik Nabers for a second straight week due to a concussion. The Colts are dealing with a multitude of injuries. Jonathan Taylor will miss a second straight week with an ankle injury, while Anthony Richardson and Michael Pittman Jr. are both questionable. Texans running back Joe Mixon could make his return this week after missing the past 3 games with an ankle injury. And Bucs tailback Rachaad White is listed as doubtful with a foot injury, but is considered a game-time decision, according to head coach Todd Bowles. So what does this all mean for your fantasy team? Well, we bring in fantasy sports writer for CBS Sports, Heath Cummings, to help us out. And Heath, I actually thought you would still be grieving the Royals loss, but you're here.
Yeah, this is not the best way to start the evening, but we're good to go.
We're good to go, and we're taking over to the Indianapolis Colts, who are not good to go. They have ruled out Jonathan Taylor for Sunday's game against the Titans, and he'll miss a second straight game with that ankle injury. But of course, they bring Anthony Richardson, who's questionable after that oblique injury. What does this all mean for your fantasy team, and what should people do?
Yeah, sounds like Trey Sermon's okay, so he'll be the starting running back for the Colts, sharing work, but the guy that you want to start as a low-end number 2 running back. We've seen Sermon not necessarily be efficient, but he does get the red zone touches. He was heavily involved in the passing game. What could change his role in the passing game is the fact that Anthony Richardson's back. And while we like Richardson much more than Joe Flacco for fantasy purposes, Anthony Richardson also has kind of a way of creating a worse environment for everyone around him because of how much he does on his own. We're viewing Richardson, if he plays, as a high-end QB2. The wide receiver is the big surprise with Michael Pittman. Earlier in the week, we were talking about this guy maybe going on injured reserve. Now we're talking about him maybe playing in week 6. Assuming that he does, we're viewing Josh Downs as the best Colts wide receiver, a borderline number 2. Again, would have been better if Flacco was starting. Pittman and Alec Pierce really just dart throw flexes now. I know that Pittman's toughing it out and playing through this back injury. I don't necessarily want to bet on him also producing fantasy points.
Yeah, it definitely will be interesting to see how that develops for Sunday. And let's talk about the Houston Texans, who are listing running back Joe Mixon as questionable for Sunday's game against the Patriots. Mixon had been out since suffering that knee injury in week 2 win over the Bears. Should the owner still be on the Mixon train, though? Because sometimes he's ruled questionable and then he's ruled out prior to kickoff. So I feel like all that in the fantasy world seems a little sus, as we should say.
Yeah, another thing that kind of throws a wrinkle in it is the status of Dameon Pierce, who could also be coming back. If Mixon is active, this is one you're just going to have to watch up until actives and actives get it determined. If Mixon is active, he should be in your fantasy lineup. I've got him ranked as a top 15 running back. He would be someone that you would rather start than like a Trey Sermon or some of these other injury replacements. If Mixon is out, it's really just too messy because Daria Gunbowale is handling the passing downs work. Pierce could be coming back. Cam Akers hasn't been that efficient. I don't want to start any other Texans running backs besides Mixon, and we have to wait and see if he's active.
And over in Tampa Bay with Rachaad White now listed as doubtful for Sunday's game against New Orleans with a foot injury. He's logged all those 51 carries for 187 yards this season. So who could be the backup for anybody who has him on his team?
Yeah, I mean, in Tampa Bay, we're looking about excitedly at Bucky Irving because Irving's been the better rusher so far this year. White has really struggled on a per-carry basis. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that we get to find out about this situation. It is, one, will they use Bucky Irving, who had size concerns coming into the NFL, as a full-time workhorse back, or would you see a pretty big boost for a guy like Sean Tucker? And 2, will they use Bucky Irving in the passing game the same way they've used Rachaad White? If they do, then we've probably all got Bucky Irving ranked too low as a low-end number 2 or high-end number 3 running back. I'm confident starting him over someone like Trey Sermon, but it's also a week where we get to find out about his role when White's not there, because at some point this season, Irving could just take this job.
And let's talk about the New York Giants, who are dealing with a couple injuries themselves. Devin Singletary obviously questionable with that groin injury, but now Malik Nabers ruled out for the second straight game with a concussion. Feel like some guys, if they have them on their fantasy team, what can you expect and who should you have as backup?
Well, at wide receiver, what we know is we want to start Wan'Dale Robinson, and frankly, we want to start Wan'Dale Robinson whether Malik Nabers is playing or not. He had a 27% target share with Nabers on the field, and he's at 28% last week. He's a starter. Darius Slayton was actually the lead wide receiver for this team last week. I view Slayton as a boom-bust number 3. Fantastic matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, who haven't been able to stop anybody all season long. You can even consider starting Daniel Jones against this defense, though we would like Jones Jones more if he had Malik Nabers. At running back, this is the worst of situations because it's a true game time decision for Devin Singletary. If Singletary was active, you'd start him as a low-end number 2. If Singletary is inactive, you start Tyrone Tracy as a low-end number 2. Unfortunately, with this being a Sunday night game, you're not necessarily going to know if Singletary's playing before the rest of the games happen, so you pretty much should start any top 30 running back over both of these guys unless you happen to have both of them and you can wait until Sunday night and make the decision.
I know some feel like when it's waiting till all day for Sunday night, right? But it's one of those things that you do have to wait for. But for the Eagles, wide receivers A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are off the injury report ahead of Sunday's game against the Browns. And they were told, he's back to 100%. But is that something that owners should jump on right away, or what do you think?
Yeah, A.J. Brown, no doubt about it. You get him in your lineup, you don't even think twice about it. I think the other guy who that's true for, who has struggled, Jalen Hurts, has not been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He's also not been playing with his top weapons. Hurts is a must-start guy as well. Devontae Smith's the one who is interesting because if you look really over the course of the past 3 years since A.J. Brown arrived, when Brown and Smith and Goddard have all been healthy, Smith has not been a must-start wide receiver. So I would view him as more of a boom-bust number 3. This also hurts the stock a little bit of Dallas Goedert, who's been the best tight end in fantasy football or close to it. He's now more of a low-end starter, but the tight end position's so terrible that there's no doubt you're still starting Goddard.
And maybe we should say that again because, yeah, the tight end position has been a little questionable throughout the season so far. But, of course, we've seen Evan Ingram now questionable. What do you think of his, he hasn't seen any game action. And if you have him on there and he ends up being active for Sunday's game, should you even play him?
Well, I'd much rather play Dallas Goedert over him. I think there's a possibility you picked up Tucker Kraft to play for Evan Ingram earlier this year. I'd much rather start Tucker Kraft than Evan Ingram. But because of the history of Evan Ingram in this offense when he's been healthy, because of the history of Doug Peterson offenses with tight ends, I will still rank Ingram as a top 13, top 14 guy coming back. You can start him basically if you don't have someone who's already top 12. Like Pat Freiermuth, I'd still start him as well. But if you're really struggling at the position, you see Ingram out there on the waiver wire, he's as good as anybody to pick up and stream this week.
That's something that we're definitely looking forward to. Heath, thank you so much for joining us. And remember to tune in to Fantasy Football Today. Catch Heath Cummings on all things fantasy football on that podcast. Right there, QR code. Listen in.